The storm over the Atlantic had turned the sky the color of old steel. From orbit, the weather front looked like a wound spinning across the ocean, a vast gray spiral breathing lightning into the darkness below. High above it, a station named Orion's Gate hung silently, its lights dimmed, its personnel tense. Inside, the hum of the ventilation and the distant pulse of fusion drives filled the air, the heartbeat of a civilization that had finally reached the stars and learned they weren't empty. Commander Elena Grant stood at the viewing port, arms folded, jaw tight. She wasn't watching the Earth. She was watching the void beyond, that infinite black sea where her friend had disappeared 3 weeks ago. Captain Aaron Hale, Terran Navy Intelligence. 38 years old. One of the finest first contact specialists Earth had. He'd gone on a diplomatic mission to the Threx Dominion, a minor alien power on the galactic fringe. He wasn't supposed to vanish. But he had. And now, the Threx weren't answering calls. Elena's reflection flickered in the glass as the door behind her hissed open. "Commander," said a voice. "Fleet command's waiting." She turned to see Lieutenant Jonah Reed, young, pale, and nervous. He held a tablet clutched to his chest. His eyes avoided hers, not out of disrespect, but fear. Everyone was afraid now. Not of the aliens, of what Earth might do next. Elena nodded once and strode past him. The corridor curved with the rotation of the ring, the artificial gravity faint but steady. Soldiers, technicians, and diplomats all gave her the same look, that unspoken question, is it true? It was. They'd confirmed the transmission yesterday. The Threx Regent, in a grainy holographic broadcast, had admitted they were holding Captain Hale alive as a security measure. The diplomatic language couldn't hide the truth. It was a hostage situation. The first in interstellar history. When Elena entered the fleet command chamber, the hum of voices stopped instantly. 3 admirals stood around a holographic table displaying the map of known space. Earth's colonies, the Threx sector, and a dozen smaller polities shimmered in blue and red. The air smelled faintly of ozone and burned coffee. "Commander Grant," said Admiral Marcus Heller, gray-haired and iron-spined. "You served with Hale, didn't you?" "Yes, sir. 2 tours. He saved my life on Europa Prime." Heller nodded. "Then you know why this can't stand." The hologram shifted. A single point, a red beacon, blinked near the Threx capital world. "They're holding him here," Heller said. "In orbit above Vornka. Our scans confirm heavy defense platforms. They're daring us to act." "Has the Council authorized retaliation?" Elena asked. A silence fell that answered her better than words. Heller's jaw flexed. "The Council wants to negotiate. They think we're not ready for a war." Elena frowned. "And are we?" The Admiral looked at her for a long moment, then gestured to the map. "We're as ready as we'll ever be." He tapped a command. The map expanded, blue lines branching across the stars, linking a dozen fleet symbols under a single command node. "The Armada of Sol," he said quietly. 17 carrier groups, 83 destroyers, and 100,000 souls. If the Threx don't release Hale in 72 hours, we bring him home ourselves. The air in the room thickened. "Sir," Elena said carefully, "the Threx Dominion isn't a backwater. They've got plasma fortresses, drone fleets." "And we've got Earth," Heller interrupted, his voice cold as vacuum. "The difference is, we fight for one of our own." She stared at the holographic fleet, its icons glowing like embers across the void. "One man," she thought. "One man, and we're about to move heaven and earth to get him back." Later, alone in her quarters, Elena pulled out an old data drive. On it was a message from Hale, recorded before his final mission. His voice was calm, amused, unshakably human. "If anything happens out there, tell my sister I'm fine. Tell her I got to see the stars up close. Tell her, it was worth it." She closed her eyes. The storm on Earth below flashed again, white veins across the dark. Maybe he could see them from wherever he was. Maybe not. A soft chime interrupted her thoughts. "Incoming transmission, priority black." She tapped accept. The hologram flickered, and a face appeared alien, reptilian, and cold. A Threx. This is Regent Corvethera of the Dominion, the creature said, its voice has filtered through translation algorithms. We know you prepare your fleet. Hear this, Terran, if you cross into our space, your captain dies. Slowly. Then it leaned closer, unblinking. He is still alive. For now. The image cut out. Elena's hand trembled just once. Then she steadied herself. In the silence, she whispered, that was a mistake. When the Armada left Earth orbit 3 days later, the planet's night side glowed with the reflections of thousands of thruster plumes. Families watched from cities, mountains, and deserts as the black silhouettes of ships blotted out the stars. They weren't just metal. They were resolve given form, forged by grief, fury, and loyalty. Commander Grant stood on the bridge of the flagship TNS Resolute, surrounded by her crew, her uniform dark and crisp. The countdown ticked in the air. Fleet status, she asked. All groups reporting ready, Commander, said Jonah Reed, his voice steadier now. Jump coordinates locked. On your command. Elena exhaled slowly. Then let's bring him home. The stars outside stretched into blue fire. And the Armada of Sol vanished into the void. The Armada of Sol erupted from slipspace like a storm of knives. Thousands of hulls shimmered into reality, silver and black, cutting through the darkness above the alien border. One moment, the Threx Dominion's frontier was silent, the next, it was eclipsed by human vengeance. On the flagship TNS Resolute, the bridge was dim except for the glow of tactical screens. The hum of reactors vibrated beneath their boots. Commander Elena Grant stood at the helm, her eyes locked on the holographic projection, a three-dimensional map of enemy space, pulsing with red markers. Behind her, Lieutenant Jonah Reed whispered, God help anyone standing between us and Vornka. Elena didn't answer. Her gaze was steel. Signal the fleet, she said. Initiate Operation Homefire. A moment later, every Terran ship received the command. Carrier decks opened like metallic flowers, releasing squadrons of fighters into the void. Drone relays flared alive. The silence of space broke under coordinated fury. Task Group Alpha, move to intercept outer patrols, Grant ordered. Beta Group, secure the relay stations. No witnesses, no transmissions. Understood, replied Admiral Heller's voice through the comms today. Commander, the galaxy learns what happens when they take one of ours. The Threx patrol fleet never stood a chance. 6 destroyers, outdated and sluggish, were shredded in minutes. Terran railguns fired tungsten at near-relativistic speeds, kinetic lances that tore through shields and hull alike. Each impact was a miniature supernova, silent but blinding. For centuries, the Threx had believed humans were a cautious, defensive species, diplomats and colonists, not conquerors. They had mistaken patience for weakness. Now they saw the truth. Elena watched the destruction unfold with grim focus. Each glowing wreck on the map was another barrier removed. Each confirmed kill, another step closer to Captain Hale. Then came the first human loss. Ma'am, cried Jonah. The Bastion, she's hit. Elena spun to the display. One of their escort frigates was drifting, venting plasma. Enemy torpedoes had breached its midsection. Through the static, the voice of its captain, Lieutenant Commander Paige Norrell, came through, ragged and calm. We're losing containment. Pull back. Don't risk. Then static. A bloom of light, white, silent, final. Jonah flinched. She just. Elena's hand clenched on the railing. Mark her position, she said quietly. We'll bring her home too. The bridge was silent for a long moment, save for the low rumble of drives. Then she said, Helm. Advance to the next checkpoint. Course locked, the pilot murmured. 3 light minutes to the Threx relay. Hours later, a ripple of light preceded their arrival in orbit above the Threx communications moon Carathal. The base bristled with antennae, a skeletal structure crawling with energy fields, their main data nexus to the Dominion capital. Elena's lips tightened. That's their throat, she said. Cut it. Arming Mac cannons, Jonah confirmed. Firing in 3. The Resolute's main gun spoke in silence, a flash of blue plasma, a streak of kinetic fury that crossed space in seconds. The first impact cracked the moon's surface. The second turned the relay into molten glass. Across the fleet, cheers erupted over comms. Heller's voice cut through them. Dominion channels just went dark. They can't call for help. Proceed to Phase 2. Advance to Vornka. Elena allowed herself one breath of satisfaction, then the sensor screamed. Multiple contacts. Jonah shouted. Bearing 090. They're dropping out of warp fast. The holographic map erupted in red. Not patrols this time. Warships. Hundreds. The Threx defense armada had arrived. The stars themselves seemed to flare as the two armadas met. Spearheads of light crossed the void, plasma bolts, rail slugs, torpedoes. The collision of technologies, human kinetic fury versus Threx plasma storms, turned the blackness into a swirling aurora of death. Brace for impact, the helmsman yelled. The Resolute shuddered as energy waves rippled across its shields. The smell of ozone filled the bridge, sparks rained from a console. Elena barked, redirect power to forward shields. Target their carriers, break their formation. Fighter squadrons screamed past the viewport, vapor trails glowing electric blue. The human pilots were relentless, cutting through alien formations with precision born of desperation. One transmission bled through comms, chaotic but proud. This is Falcon Wing. Multiple hostiles down. We're still in it, Commander. Elena's voice remained steady. Keep them pinned, Falcon. We're coming through. The battle stretched over hours, then days. The fleet advanced by blood and steel, burning through ship after ship. They lost dozens of vessels. But for every Terran ship that fell, 3 Threx burned. By the third day, the Dominion's defenses were broken open like shattered glass. When silence finally settled, Elena stood surrounded by exhausted officers. Smoke drifted through the bridge. The light of Vornka, the Threx capital world, glowed before them, a crimson sphere wrapped in defense platforms. She stared at it for a long moment. That's where he is, she said softly. Somewhere down there. Command wants to regroup, Jonah murmured. We've lost 27 ships. Our supply lines. Elena cut him off. He's alive. We move. She turned to the comms officer. Patch me through to the fleet. Static, then a chorus of weary human voices filled the channel, captains, pilots, gunners, all waiting. Elena's tone was low, but carried the weight of Earth behind it. This is Commander Grant. We came for one of our own. He's here, on that world. We've bled to reach him, and we're not turning back. Every light you see outside that viewport, every ship still burning, they're counting on us to finish what we started. We go in now. We end this now. Silence, then the calms filled with one reply, echoed by 1,000 ships. For Hail. For Earth. For all of us. The engines of the Armada of Sol flared once more, brighter than dawn. The final assault had begun. Far below, on the surface of Vornka, Captain Aaron Hale was alive, barely. His uniform was torn, his face pale from weeks in captivity. His cell was carved from obsidian and humming with alien force fields. He didn't know how long he'd been there, only that he'd heard the sky scream 3 nights ago. Since then, the guards had become nervous, whispers echoing through the corridors about the Terrans and the fire in the stars. That night, the lights flickered. A tremor shook the floor. Then another, stronger. Hale stood, weak but alert. Outside his cell, alarms blared. Alien shouts echoed down the hall. Then, through the chaos, came a deep, distant rumble, a sound he knew better than his own heartbeat. Orbital bombardment. He smiled faintly through the blood on his lip. They came, he whispered. Goddamn, they really came. The ceiling above trembled. Dust rained down like ash. Somewhere, deep in the fortress, the wrath of humanity was breaking through. The last thing Hale heard before the lights died completely was the voice of a terrified Threxguard shouting into a comlink. "They're here! The humans are here!" The air above Vornka burned. Columns of fire rained from orbit, precision strikes carving open the alien stronghold like the wrath of gods. The once golden skies of the Threx capital were now an inferno of smoke and thunder, laced with the blue trails of Terran dropships piercing the atmosphere. On the flagship TNS Resolute, Commander Elena Grant gripped the command rail, eyes unblinking as the feed from the surface streamed before her. The operation was in motion, one of the largest planetary assaults humanity had ever launched. "Landing zones are hot," reported Lieutenant Jonah Reed, sweat streaking his face. "Enemy plasma batteries are still active. Dropships are taking fire." "Keep them covered," Elena ordered. "Redirect carrier squadrons to suppress those batteries. I want Hale alive." A thunderclap vibrated through the ship's hull, a massive explosion blooming on screen as a Terran cruiser took a hit. Her jaw tightened. The cost of this mission was already high, and it was only rising. But retreat was never an option. Not after what they'd lost. "Patch me through to the ground teams," she said. "Now." Static crackled, then the voice of Major Ethan Cole, leader of the Rescue Strike Force, came through the channel, broken but determined. "Resolute, this is Ground Team Alpha. We've landed inside the fortress perimeter. Heavy resistance, but we're pushing through. Locals are scattering, I think they didn't expect us this fast." "Status on the target?" Elena demanded. "No visual yet. Their prisons are subterranean. We're tracking energy signatures now." Her fingers drummed on the rail. Every second mattered. Hale had survived this long, but she knew the Threx would rather bury their entire planet than let humanity take him back alive. Below, amid the smoke and chaos, Major Cole's boots hit alien soil. The fortress was a labyrinth of black stone and glowing veins of energy, alive with the stench of ozone and scorched metal. Terran soldiers moved in tight formation behind him, rifles humming, HUDs flickering with data. "Room clear," shouted Sergeant Mira Torres, scanning with her rifle. "Move. Next junction, left side." Cole barked. A plasma bolt hissed past his shoulder. He dropped to one knee, returned fire, and watched the alien soldier collapse in a burst of light. The team pressed on through corridors vibrating with distant detonations. The walls trembled, orbital rounds were still striking the outer sectors. Cole's comm crackled. "We've got him," came the voice of Private Lien. "Signal trace confirms, cell block 9, sublevel 3. Cole's heart slammed against his chest. "Copy that. Torres, with me. Lien, guide us in." They sprinted through another hall, passing the bodies of fallen guards, reptilian Threx with armor still smoking. When they reached the stairwell descending into the lower levels, the ground shook again. A massive explosion somewhere above sent debris raining from the ceiling. Cole raised his voice over the noise. "We're out of time. Move." In the darkness of cell block 9, Captain Aaron Hale lay half-conscious. The air was thick with heat and dust, the walls pulsed with red emergency light. He could hear the muffled chaos above, explosions, screams, and the unmistakable roar of Terran engines. He smiled weakly. "Took you long enough," he muttered. Then, faintly, footsteps, heavy, deliberate, echoed down the hall. Alien voices hissed in panic. Gunfire followed. A moment later, the door to his cell blew inward in a flash of light. Through the haze stepped a figure in black armor, the Terran flag emblazoned on the shoulder. "Captain Hale," the soldier shouted. "We're here to bring you home." Hale blinked, pushing himself upright. "Major Cole," he rasped. "You look terrible." Cole almost laughed. "So do you. Let's go." Torres rushed forward, wrapping Hale's arm over her shoulder. "We've got you, sir." But before they could move, alarms shrieked overhead. The entire corridor glowed crimson. Jonah's voice came over the comms, distorted by static. "Warning! Orbital platforms are charging main cannons. They're targeting the surface. You have 2 minutes before impact. Cole cursed. We'll never clear the blast zone. Hale's voice, hoarse but sharp, cut through the noise. There's an emergency hangar 1 level up. They used it to transfer me here. Then that's where we're going, Cole said. Move. They sprinted through the collapsing halls, walls splitting under the tremors. A shockwave hurled them forward as part of the ceiling gave way. Torres stumbled but didn't fall. She dragged Hale onward, refusing to let go. Above them, the sky itself began to glow. From orbit, Elena watched in horror as Vornka's surface ignited massive plasma beams from the Threx defense grid, cutting swaths of molten destruction. Those maniacs, she breathed. They're glassing their own city. Jonah's fingers flew across the console. We can't target those platforms, they're inside the capital shield. Then take the shield down, Elena snapped. Focus all remaining ships on that emitter. I don't care what it costs. Understood. Outside, Terran cruisers broke formation, diving toward the shield generator, an immense spire of obsidian and plasma energy rising from the planet's surface. The first volley struck, flaring blue. The second tore through. The third obliterated it. The shield collapsed. Commander, Jonah said hoarsely, they're through. Then bring them home, she said. Below, Cole and his team burst into the emergency hangar, a cavernous bay opening onto the burning horizon. Through the rising smoke, they could see the outline of Terran shuttles descending. Evac inbound. Torres yelled. But the hangar doors trembled as alien soldiers stormed in from the opposite side, roaring, firing plasma bolts that seared the walls. Cole dove behind a pillar, shouting, "Return fire!" The firefight erupted, deafening and brutal. Hale, still weak, crawled toward a fallen rifle and managed to prop himself up. Every instinct screamed to survive. He fired once, twice. A Threx soldier went down. Torres shouted over comms, 3 hostiles left. Then one of the aliens, towering and scaled in crimson armor, charged with a plasma blade raised high straight for Hale. Cole turned too late. A gunshot cracked, not plasma, not human standard issue. A sniper round from above. The alien dropped instantly, lifeless. Cole looked up in disbelief. A shuttle hovered at the bay's edge, ramp open, and at the top of it, framed in fire and smoke, stood Elena Grant, rifle in hand. She shouted through the calm, "Get him aboard!" They ran, half carrying Hale. The deck shuddered as another blast struck nearby. Cole leapt up the ramp last, slamming the control panel as the hatch seal shut. "Pilot, punch it!" Elena ordered. The shuttle rocketed skyward, engines howling. Minutes later, the Resolute's hangar received them. Medics swarmed Hale immediately, checking vitals, cutting away restraints. He blinked against the bright lights. When he finally focused, he saw her, Elena Grant, standing before him, soot on her face, uniform torn, eyes full of exhaustion and relief. He managed a faint smile. "You came all this way, just for me?" She exhaled a shaky breath. "Don't flatter yourself, Captain. You're just bad at dying." He laughed, though it came out as a cough. "Tell my sister I'm." "You can tell her yourself," she said softly. The hangar shook again, distant explosions echoing through the hull. Jonah's voice came over the intercom. "Commander, enemy fleet is retreating. The Dominion is broken." Elena closed her eyes for one long second. Then she looked at Hale. "Let's take you home." 2 weeks later, Earth's sky burned not with war, but with the return of its fleet. The people who had watched the Armada depart in silence now stood in the streets and on rooftops, weeping and cheering as the ships came back through the clouds. At the center of the formation flew the TNS Resolute, its hull scarred but proud. Inside, Hale walked slowly onto the observation deck, still pale but alive. Elena stood beside him, gazing down at the blue world beneath. "Hell of a thing," he said quietly. "All this, for one man." She turned to him. "No. For what that man stood for." He frowned. "And what's that?" Her eyes stayed on the planet below. That no one takes one of us and walks away. The two stood in silence as the Armada descended, the sun rising behind them, light gleaming across the battered steel of humanity's ships. Earth had sent its fury across the stars and brought one of its own back home.